Hey there, this is Sam Flegal, and I'm going to be talking about my painting Tears Promise. Today we're going to be painting the face, and to get started with that, I'm going to kind of show you how I set up my palette. So the first color is titanium white, then cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, Mars violet, magenta, sap green, dioxidine purple, ultramarine blue, cyan, cerulean blue, Payne's gray, ivory black, Davies gray, burnt umber, and sepia. And now that you know the colors, it's time to mix some paint. I'm going to start off with white, add in a little bit of raw sienna, and I'm just trying to mix some flesh tones. Looking at my reference, I'm going to want to mix basically some warm and cool shades of muddy gray that lean towards flesh tones. All right, I'm going to add in just a little bit of that cad red just to shift things a bit warmer. And a lot of this stage is very intuitive. It's about playing with colors, seeing what happens when we mix. I'm trying to mix a full range of colors. I want to do this before I start painting it all, so that then I can just select colors from my palette as I begin working on the face. Now I just added in Mars violet, which is a great color because it can very easily shift cool. Whenever you add a little titanium white, it becomes this sort of cool purple color, which I find is great for transitions and just all sorts of things with flesh tones. Then I also want to make sure to have some darker tones. Again, trying to have the full range of values. In this particular piece, it's a little bit different because the face is not the main interest. It's a secondary interest point. But I still want to have a good range of values in there. In case you're wondering, the hand itself is actually where the highest points of value and saturation are going to occur. I really want to emphasize the fact that Tyr has cut off his hand. Now I've just added Davies gray there to get a little bit more cool colors in. And that's the thing, flesh tones have a wide range of warm and cool and light and dark and shadow and highlight. So I'm just trying to get that full range. Then, adding white to send it over. You see also I've decided to bridge the two colors together. That's one thing I find on my palette. I like it when the colors mix up. I don't like a lot of areas of white because it lets me see very quickly how those colors shift, and so that as I'm painting I can immediately decide, okay, if I move over here things are getting cooler, a bit more less saturated over here, they're more saturated. I can really see how the colors are reacting towards each other, which helps me as I'm painting know where I want to put colors as I'm working on the painting. And now that you have a pretty good understanding of what I'm going to do, I'm going to speed up a little bit here. So adding in some yellow, going brighter, going saturated. You see those whites coming in, mixing in more pinkish red tones, some really saturated and bright colors, adding a bit more Davies gray for the cool colors, and that's pretty much my palette. I have all the colors mixed. I'm going to go in and put a layer of linquin down, and then I'm going to use the colors directly in that very thin layer of linquin. The linquin's to help with drying. And first, I'm going to go put in those shadows using a lot of those cool colors. I want, again, the same thing as the rest of the painting I've been talking about, where it's going to be cool on the left side and warm on the right side. And I'm following those same ideas in the painting, even to the point where if you look at the reference to the side, it doesn't have that same sense of cool to warm. That's a conscious decision I'm making as I work through this painting. And starting with the shadow areas and moving into the highlights, establishing those big forms and just, putting in another layer of flesh tone across the face. At this stage, I'm trying very hard to put down the right color in the right spot. And I'm already thinking about the finish as I work through. Now, this is only the first layer, or I guess technically the second layer on the face. But this is a really important layer as I'm establishing those opaque things. I'm pretty much obliterating the drawing at this point, though still following the guidelines. I'm putting down enough paint where you're not going to see a lot of those drawing lines come through anymore. And after I get the face kind of where I want it, I'll eventually start moving right into the beard. And that's an important tip because you want the flesh tones to mix with the tones used in the facial hair as they come together. So when you sit down to divide up how you want to tackle a piece, always plan that you're going to paint the areas around the face as well as the face as you're working in. As far as brushes goes, I'm using a zero brush. This allows me to get in and get very detailed. The face is actually kind of small in this particular piece. It's actually about as small as I like to go with a prominent face. It's important to make sure when you're planning an image that you don't end up creating something so small that you can't really even get a zero brush in there. Here you can see base color of the beard coming in, just like I was talking about. And I want to age him a bit, so I'm going to gray up some parts of the beard as well. And I'm going to do the same thing with the hair. Come up and establish the darks, kind of glaze over everything, get that hairline going, and then come in and add a little more volume to it, and eventually come in with the lighter tones where the highlights are in order to pull those out as well. And I'm focusing on these techniques in the face, particularly because the faces are so hard. They require a lot more dedication, but these same principles will be applied throughout the entire painting, establishing the darks, pushing and pulling, putting the right colors down, trying to mix all the colors beforehand, though I will mix a little bit of color as I need and get more familiar with my palette. But a lot of it, this applies to everything. Now, I'm not going to in detail show the next several stages of the painting, but the things you're seeing here in this face, I'm going to apply down into his armor, into his hands, into his gear, and just keep going, even into the wolf in the background, all that stuff. These same ideas apply. And we're getting close to some of the last stages now. I'm going to be tweaking just a few things, adding in those really intense highlights in the hair, letting all that go. Smoothing out the eyebrows a bit, just cleaning things up. I'll also come in and put those darks into the eyes. I like some of my darkest darks in the painting to be in the pupil of the eyes. And then you can control how intense that is by the whites of the eyes, which in this case, they're actually quite dark, leaning towards a dark gray because they're in shadow. Then come in with some of those darks and establishing the cheekbones and the hair and just making sure I haven't lost too much. And then a little bit of the white highlights in the face. And then I'm going to start smoothing things out. A lot of this is just using a brush not loaded with any paint, just sort of smoothing things, pushing things around, letting that blend come together. You can see I've switched now to a different brush because it probably wasn't clean enough to make sure that as those areas blend, all that comes together. And that brings us to a close. I'm going to let this dry and then I'll have another video for you. I'm Sam Flegal.